Hi everybody, Minus here from Pantheon Plus, and today I wanted to take some of the news that we've heard around races and classes and try to put them together in a short video here called Adding It Up with Minus. Today I'm going to give you my opinion on the best race class combos from what we know so far about the races of Pantheon. Well, the release of all the racial abilities as far as passives really helped us narrow down some of our ideas on what we want to play for those that are really hardcore into stat management and maxing. So with that being said, let's cut right to it as I give you my preferred races per class. Looking at our first class, Cleric, it was pretty obvious to me that Human was the standout. Only having 3 races made it pretty easy. The 2% haste to both spell and physical damage puts them ahead of the pack in my opinion for a healing class that would be dependent like the Cleric. As the runner-up for this, Dwarves, with their high hit points from stamina, ability to be immune to disarm, resistances, and blunt weapon support were my number 2. Dire Lords, the badass tank of the group, who really tanks through damage and heals through damage, was a very easy pick for number 1. Ogres, with their resistance to stun, critical damage bonuses, and the attack power gained from strength, make them, in my opinion, the best Dire Lord. Now, following up as a recommended second or runner-up was a bit more difficult. We could have went a couple different ways, but due to the max HP gain and the resistance from fear and the run speed benefits of the Scar, and the fact that they just kind of look like a Dire Lord, I edged them slightly above Humans as the second best Dire Lord. Druids, our pet healing class, actually stood out pretty well for the Ashen Elves. With 20% resistance to spell interrupt and extra spell rating from Wisdom, the Ashen version of the Elves stood out as the best choice for Druid. As a runner-up, the Archai, with mana drain reduction, Elemental Attunement, which you would obviously select Nature, and Acclamation gave them a good runner-up feel for the Druid healer class. The Enchanter, the class we have been missing so greatly from MMOs. This one was also pretty easy for me. The Gnome is a huge standout as a caster and in general, but as an enchanter, the extra mana, spell increases, and the resistance to silence, which is huge in high mez situations, makes the Gnome a major player as far as enchanters. As a runner-up, I've given it to Humans. Wasn't quite as easy to pick, but with the 2% haste buff, as well as their skill effectiveness being increased when modified by Charisma, which I imagine would be pretty important for an enchanter, the Humans fell into the number 2 slot pretty well. The Monk was a very difficult class for me, probably the hardest to determine the best race class combos, but I went with Human as the overall best with their 2% to haste, which would be a huge advantage for any DPS Monk. Now that said, perhaps Charisma will have a play on some of their abilities, maybe something like Fiend Death, but I'm not too sure that that's going to play out. Either way, I'm going to give Humans the top spot as a Monk, followed up by Scar as the runner-up. The max HP, resistance to fear, and run speed buff are phenomenal assets to quick off-tanking moments, as well as running in and pulling mobs. The Scar could possibly play over the Humans here, but the 2% haste is massive. Well, this one did the work for me. With only 2 possible races for Paladins, it was really a determination of which of the 2 would be best. In this scenario, I've chose to put the Dwarf over the Human for their immunity to disarm, extra HP from Stam, resistances, and blunt weapons, which I believe will all come into play to be a great Paladin. Of course, Humans as the only other race that can be a Paladin, I do believe that their 2% haste and shield mastery will help tremendously as a Paladin. Next up was Rangers, and the Ember Elves were an easy selection as the best race for Rangers. They get knockback resistance, extra attack rating from dexterity, and they have increased effectiveness when it comes to abilities modified by agility. All of these things make the Ember Elf an amazing pick for Ranger. As a backup, I would have loved to say Halfling Ranger as the secondary, but I think Human edges them out pretty significantly with the simple 2% haste to their abilities, as well as factoring in that Charisma may have play with its increased effectiveness, making Humans a solid number 2 choice for Rangers. Next up is my favorite class, the Rogue, and I've been debating this one for a while, but when the racial passives were announced, Halfling stood out very highly as the best choice. They have dagger skills increased by 10, a resistance to charm and mez, and increased consumables which can have a big play in endgame or even just min-maxing. As a secondary, I believe Ember Elves are a very close second. Possibly even the best, but I won't play an elf, of course. They have knockback resist, extra attack rating per dexterity, increased effectiveness of abilities modified by agility, all which play in very well with a rogue. I think either one would give you a great roguelike experience. Next up was Shaman, and man did I want to say that the best one would be an Archai, but I actually couldn't even put them at first or second when looking at the Shaman abilities. I had to put humans first, and this may seem odd to some people, but the base 2% haste from humans is going to stack very well with the passive ability of shamans, which increases their haste as they continue to cast. This base 2% could be massive in endgame and min-maxing and puts them a step ahead of everybody with just simply this one passive ability. Secondary, I would again love to say Archai, but Ashen Elves with a 20% chance to resist spell interruption and extra spell rating from Wisdom, which I believe the Shaman will play off of very well, puts them even slightly ahead of the Archai, who seemed like a lock for Shaman. Next up is Summoner, and of course, with intelligence-based classes I believe it to be, the Gnome stands very tall here as the best choice for Summoner. With their extra mana, skill increases, and a silence resistance, the Gnome seems to be the magical powerhouse. Again, this is one I would have loved to put Archai in, but Archai can't be summoners, which still confuses me quite a bit. This locked the human in as the second best choice with a 2% haste buff, which really was the only thing that helped play into the summoner at all. The warrior. This one was very easy. Ogres are by far the kings of the warriors, with their resistance to stuns, critical damage, and added attack power from strength. I can't see any other race standing tall to an ogre's pure ability of being a strength meat shield. That said, I do have to pick a number 2, and I narrowed that into dwarves. The hit point increase from Stam, immunity to disarm, base resistances, and their blunt weapon support would make them great warriors when you're not using a sword. And last but not least, we have the wizard class, the mana-hungry powerhouse, and of course, that goes right into what I've been saying about gnomes. With extra mana, skill increase, and the silence resistance, I believe gnomes will be the best wizards to shell out maximum damage. As a backup, the Archai are a great number 2 to wizards. With mana drain reduction from mana-reducing spells, as well as elemental attunement and acclamation, they can not only resist, but also improve different element types, which would play right into the wizard's hands. The Archai are a very close number 1 as wizard, but I still feel gnomes to be the best. So that wraps up my choices for the best race class combos, in my opinion, in our pre-alpha state here in Pantheon. I'm sure that some of you will notice that I did not pick Darkmere for any as either a best race or a secondary. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. Did I miss one for them? Or am I right in saying that they really don't stand out for any class in particular? Also, if you disagree with anything I said, as always, Pantheon Plus is about discussion. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the best class race selection, so leave those in the comments below. And as always, if you like our content, please do not hesitate to hit the subscribe button. You guys have always been amazing with that. And if you want to know when we go live on Pantheon Plus U on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, hit that notification button so that you can be notified when we go live or post new content. As always, you guys are awesome, and we will see you soon here at Pantheon Plus.